What is up, Steeler fans? Welcome back to another episode of The Hangover. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me, as always, Shannon White. Shannon, how you doing, my man? How's it going?
I'm going good. And we was just talking a little bit before the show that uh, not a whole lot going on today, but uh, but still waiting on some answers.
Yeah, we definitely are as Steeler fans. I think all of us have been left out in the dark here when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers in the quarterback position, as the title is QB Purgatory. And I think that the Steelers have been in QB Purgatory for a few years now, going into a situation where they have continually been, around the winning about 9 to 11 games a year, ending up anywhere between 18 to 21 in the draft order, not really high enough to go up there and pick up somebody, and not really, financially able to until of recent to go out there and get a good quarterback. They find themselves in a year where perhaps now they got some money, but not very many options. Aaron Rodgers has been the guy that I think that has been the front runner when it comes to the potential Pittsburgh Steelers starter in the 2025-2026 season. He spent 6 hours in the building. Apparently, they didn't talk about contracts. So, what do you think was being talked about and conversed in that 6 hour meeting?
Well, according to rumor, they've already made him a deal offer, and it's a 1 year offer. And the rumor supposedly is that he wants a 2 year offer, and he probably wants a little more than they're willing to pay. And I think they'll give him something in line with maybe 30 million for 1 year. Is some numbers I've heard. But I'm not really interested myself. But I figured that he come in to talk to him to see what kind of control they would give him over the offense. How would he mesh with Arthur Smith's offense? Because we know Arthur Smith's going to want to continue to try to run the ball effectively and more, even if you get Rodgers. So I think it was just a kind of, kick the tires, get to know you meeting. But I don't know if it's. I think both parties still feel the same way. I think the Steelers are willing to wait because they got Rudolph. Mm-hmm. And I think Rodgers is in no hurry because he don't want to have to mess with anything before training camp.
Well, I mean, that's the option, right? I mean, It's he either signs with the Pittsburgh Steelers because at this point the Giants have signed Winston, which Jameis Winston isn't a guaranteed starter in this league. I mean, he can put up some impressive numbers, but he can also kill you at the same time. And, the Giants go out there, they sign him, and, I think he's just probably equivalent to a Mason Rudolph signing for New York, being that, all right, we got a guy, we can trust him to start if Rodgers chooses the other club, but at least we got somebody in waiting. And, with Mason, I think the Steelers should feel very comfortable and confident in what they have in him. I mean, he started his career with Pittsburgh. Majority of his career has been with Pittsburgh. And I think that builds some level of confidence. But if Aaron Rodgers doesn't sign now, I mean, the only thing he can do, or the one thing he can do, is just kind of wait till somebody does get hurt, and a team becomes very desperate to go out there and get him on the club. Those are basically his options there. Based on the rumors that are out there, and they are for what they are, rumors. There was no contract conversation going on while he was in Pittsburgh. Aaron Rodgers, that is. Arthur Smith and Russell Wilson had a falling out. And from what we understand, or what I understand, is a lot of that had to do with Russell Wilson changing the plays. I don't think you're going to get a different result, if not a worse result, with an Aaron Rodgers at the helm.
Yes.
I can see some problems there. How do you think those two can coexist, if they can?
Well, we see what Rodgers did to Saleh, the head coach for the Jets. Saleh is I thought he was one of the best young coaches out there. I mean, he won more games with Wilson. I can't think of Wilson, the quarterback before Rodgers, and then he played some last year too. I can't think.
Jordan Love.
Huh?
No, the quarterback before Rodgers.
Yeah.
After.
Well, he was also on the team last year. The young kid from BYU.
Oh, Willis.
Willis.
Yes.
No, it wasn't Willis, was it?
Oh no, Zach Wilson. I'm sorry.
Zach Wilson. Yes, I know it wasn't Russell Wilson for sure, but no, I think that Rodgers, like, he had trouble there, but he got the coach fired. He's just a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it'll be problems up and down if he comes to Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
I think Tomlin will be able to, keep everything kind of hush hush, like he did with AB, like he does with Pickens. But we'll see signs of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think he'll clash with Arthur Smith. It wouldn't shock me if he don't get Arthur Smith fired in the middle of the season. I mean, I'm serious. I just think that Rodgers just has trouble. And I was talking to a guy at church this weekend. I can see Rodgers having big problems with DK Metcalf and Pickens. I mean,
yeah.
you're not going to talk to DK Metcalf like he did to Garrett Wilson. It just ain't going to happen. And I just see a lot of drama there that I hope the Steelers can avoid.
I agree. I agree. And I think that there is a lot of cons there. You have Aaron Rodgers. I mean, look at what's going on already. The drama's already started and he's not even on the club.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's looking at what is he going to do next? When is he going to sign and whatever? It just kind of seems like all the attention is on him. And I think that's the way he likes it. Is this a sign of things to come, so to speak, when it comes to Rodgers being a potential Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback? But what are some pros? I do think that when you look at his game at the last bit of last season, he still has an arm and I think he can still make the throws. I would think that he'd probably give the Steelers, based on the quarterbacks that are out there, and this includes Mason Rudolph, I think he gives the Steelers the best chance to get a ring. Now, I don't think he's probably the best chance to get to the playoffs, which is weird to say. I think that if he's in the playoffs, you rather have Aaron Rodgers than what you have out there. But to go throughout a 17-game season, I'm not sure if that's your best option. Does that make sense? The situational aspect of it, I'd rather have Rodgers in, but everything else is, I mean, we've seen what that is. I mean, the Steelers have been situational football only working in the fourth quarter for the most part of the last few years for a while now. So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I understand what you're saying. If there's plays that they keep showing replays of recently and bad snaps and him being able to pick the ball up and just have the forethought and the accuracy and the arm to zip it in there for a late touchdown. He still has that incredible talent.
Mm-hmm.
And if everything goes right, but I don't see this team ready to compete for the championship yet. I still think they're getting the pieces together. They're getting the roster together. I just have trouble having faith in a 41-year-old quarterback to remain healthy, especially as this offensive line has talent, but it's going to take a while to get the people in the right positions and let them gel. And to get to that championship level, the running backs are going to be, at least two of them is going to be new. And we got to get them. We got to figure out the best way to use DK Metcalf because he is a great player, but he's more of a specialized weapon. Mm-hmm. And you want to use him to his peak efficiency, which I don't know if trying to use him like they used the receivers last year is the best way to get peak performance out of Metcalf. So I just and then the defense still, they've got like Slay. Is Slay a 1-year rental at his age? And he's only a 1-year contract. So I just don't. I'm not worried about the championship right now. I'm actually worried about the rebuild to get to our next championship. And Rodgers, if anything, is a bridge quarterback 2 years max, more than likely 1 year. So,
Yeah.
as you say, he would have to win it this year, or I don't think it would happen, and I don't think they're ready.
Yeah, and I think if he wanted to come back next year, this would have to be a very, very successful season for him for that to happen. And even at that, going in next year being 42, you're going to definitely have to try to find a successor at that point, if not this year. But if the Steelers go in there with Mason Rudolph and Aaron Rodgers this season, I strongly suspect they're going to draft a quarterback. I just don't think that there's a quarterback in this draft that would fit the mold of what you're asking for as far as a building for the future. I'm not necessarily certain there's that guy there. What do you think?
They messed up last year? There was multiple guys that people were really high on last year. And as Big G likes to say, there's no guarantees. So last year, you knew you didn't have a quarterback that you were looking at long term, because you had Wilson and Fields was unproven just as much as he was this offseason. And last year, where there was multiple quarterbacks, you might could have traded up to round 10, 8, 9, 10, and got one of the guys that you could start developing. This year, you kind of knew there wasn't going to be a top guy coming out. And it doesn't look like there is. Next year, again, there is no guarantees. Guys come out of nowhere and and have a big year, and you're like, oh, they put themselves in that spot.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if they didn't make a mistake last year, because if you look back, I think we were talking maybe last podcast, the last 6 draft picks, first round draft picks for the Steelers have underachieved. Now, that's either injury or whatever.
Performance.
Yeah, but they have all underachieved. So let's say we give up a first round draft pick. What's the big risk? Some of these first round draft picks in the last 6 years ain't even on the team anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I know everybody's like, oh, that first round draft pick, let's clutch our pearls. We just, it's so important. Well, if it is, they would be a Pro Bowl or 2 guy in there. And the last 6 is not panned out.
No, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of potential there in the last 2 drafts that the Pittsburgh Steelers have had, but as potential is potential is just that, nothing. I mean, it's just a word of a possibility. There's nothing to stand on it. And so, you're absolutely right. But I think if they need to start hitting on some of these first rounders if they actually want an opportunity to get to the dance. Now, the last 2 guys, I think there's still an opportunity there. Broderick Jones is fairly young. Moving him over back to the left side, I think is going to be an improvement to his game. Fautanu was injured all last year, and hopefully he can recover full 100% recovery from the knee injury that he had. I have no doubt that will be the case and that he'll be back as good as he was.
But remember, he had the knee concern going into the draft.
Yeah.
And that's one reason he fell to where he did, because I've been telling people he had the best feet of any lineman in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And without that injury concern, he would have been a top 12 pick, I believe. But because of the knee, and it showed up when they did the physical, and and so that threw some people off. Well, the Steelers like, it'll be fine. And then he goes out. What happens? He misses the whole year because of his knee.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping Peyton Wilson, he fell because of his knee, and he played all year and without issue. So Darnell Washington, the Steelers got him in the 4th round?
Yeah.
And a lot of it was because they said that he was going to have arthritic knees and have a short career. And so far, so good. So, it's kind of a gamble, but I like a 3rd or 4th round gamble more than I like a 1st round gamble.
I do too. But I just think that everything so far is lining up that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to look for their quarterback of the future in next year's draft. I mean, even with what occurred, the Steelers end up going and picking up a guy, a guard who was with the most recently of the Patriots.
Yeah.
His name is Lycidas Smith, And he's a guy that was released, and the Steelers go and pick that up because it doesn't mess with the comp formula, the compensatory formula for those that don't know. And what that is whenever you lose players in free agency and you don't replace them, the NFL has given teams the opportunity to have those players replaced with draft picks. And in this next year's draft, the Steelers are going to be in line if everything goes well and there's no injuries and play go as anticipated. To have quite a few of those comp picks. I think the max is 4. And I think they're going to have a couple up as high as in the 3rd round. Now, I think that's because the Steelers are going to try to move up in next year's draft. Now, is it going to be enough to move from like 31 to 10 or 32 to 10? Probably not. But, I'll be honest. I don't see the team probably picking no later than maybe 16 or 18 next year. Just kind of where the quarterback position is, maybe, and I'm hoping I'm surprised by this, but if they're around that 15, 16, maybe even at 12, that's high. That's low enough to reach into the top 10 and pick somebody with the comp picks that they have. I strongly believe that this is what they're doing. This is their plan. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that they're looking ahead into next year's draft and just kind of saying, hey, we've overhauled the quarterback room every year for the last couple of years. What's another year?
Oh, I think it's scripted. It's fate. I mean, the drafts in Pittsburgh, they're looking for a quarterback. There's going to be, if everything goes according to plan, more guys that are considered first-round picks in next year's class. None in this year, really, other than Ward and maybe Sanders. So, yeah, I think you ride with what you got. I think if in a perfect world, you trade back, pick up another second-round pick for this year, strengthen the roster, run with a Rudolph and a guy you pick up, maybe a middle-round pick on a quarterback, just to have, to see if you can, get lucky. And then when you have your draft in Pittsburgh next year, trade up to get that guy that you want. And, on the biggest stage with the world watching, and then, you shot your shot, you went for it. Because this dipping your toe in the water is not getting it done. We went through that in the 80s and early 90s, and it just doesn't work. You got to commit. And I think this is what needs to happen. And I'm with you. I think that the next year on the draft in Pittsburgh would be the time to do it. But we kind of the name of the show, and we talked about it ahead of time, is do you overspend, for an old timer like Rodgers, or maybe a Wilson, depending on what he'd play for. Are they going to be that much better than a Rudolph or a Flacco or, some combination? Or do you do something crazy like reach this year, which I don't think anybody wants them to really reach this year. It feels like Steeler Nation and maybe even the Steelers are trying to talk themselves into Jackson Dart being worthy of 21, the pick 21. I think everybody's trying to do that. They're like, well, he did this good, and he did that good, and he did, and I've even said, he reminds me of Bo Nix. Now, I expected Bo Nix to be another Kenny Pickett, but Bo Nix exceeded expectation. But he also was playing with Sean Payton. Whereas Kenny Nix had Mike Tomlin and Matt Canada. No comparison. But even if you do get a guy and Jackson Dart turns out to be more Bo Nix, I don't like the setup with Arthur Smith. So I would just rather ride with Mason Rudolph, somebody else. You could get somebody in the mid rounds. There's a lot of talk. What's his name? Is it Milton? No, Milroe. The quarterback from Alabama.
Yeah, Milroe. One of those.
Everybody's talking about that kid, saying he could be the next Lamar Jackson. Did anybody watch Lamar Jackson play at Louisville? And watch Lamar Jackson now. I've said forever he's a running back playing quarterback. But Lamar Jackson just had his best year as a quarterback ever this year. He has gotten progressively better, more accurate, reading defenses better. He is a true MVP caliber player every year. You can't say that about that kid from Alabama ever.
Mm-hmm.
There was never a moment, even in college, you're like, that's a Heisman Trophy winner. So it scares me with so many people trying to convince themselves about this quarterback or that quarterback being worthy of maybe being the future. I just don't see it this year.
Yeah, I don't see it either. And like I said, I think that's why the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to go into next year's draft and hope to find the long-term answer there. But we're going to get more into what if they try it this year? What would be who would they reach out for? What would that look like? What would that look like? And so much more. We're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a few words from our sponsors. And we're back. Welcome back to the show. Before we get back into the content, I want to remind you guys of our website, SteelCurtainNetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Make sure you go and check that website out after the broadcast. While you're there, you can check out our audio-only podcast, which include mine that air out on Saturdays called State of the Steelers. You don't want to miss it. So the options again were, go for this older quarterback or perhaps reach in the draft. And I think you're going to have to, because you don't have a second round pick. And so I think it's a little bit dangerous to want to wait for that third round in case the guy that you want is gone. Right. I really hope they don't, but they just completely didn't go to the Michigan's pro day just to have Aaron Rodgers in the building. I think that says a lot for me, but I thought that perhaps there were some guys there that were worthy of that first round pick in Michigan. Do you think that was a mistake by not going out there?
Well, I think the whole courting Rodgers is a mistake.
That's
so everybody knows how I feel about it. But I would have had at least some of my. I'd have said you come the next day.
Yeah.
But that's Michigan Day, and I'm there to watch Grant. I'm there to watch Graham. I'm there to watch some of these guys. They got some talent. And I'd have been there because, like I said, my focus is building this roster so that when they do find a quarterback, they are ready to compete for the championship. And I think they're close, which I told you I do want to talk about. I think they're much closer with a strong draft after the free agency they've already had, plus the secret weapons coming, which we'll get to that. So I'm wanting to. I would have definitely been at Michigan's pro day.
I would have too. I don't remember. I think it was what Bugs maybe, or Ziggy Hood maybe was the last draft pick that that Coach Tomlin and the GM weren't at the pro day for. So the Steelers go out there and get a Kenneth Grant in the first round. Just kind of says that to me that Aaron Rodgers is definitely high on their priority list. But you're right. If they were to reach or if they were to pick a quarterback, would you be okay if what if Shadir Sanders falls to 21? How would you feel if they ended up drafting him? Because I think you're right. I think the Steelers need a strong draft to put themselves in position to be a player away or a quarterback away of being a very strong contender. But I think that only happens if they don't draft a quarterback. Because if you draft a quarterback in the first or third round, I mean, that's taking some pretty high realty there when it comes to your draft stock. You only have so many picks. You've gave up your second one already. What are your thoughts there?
Well, again, first round picks haven't been working out. So if a guy like Sanders was to fall, now again, I like Grant, defensive line out of Michigan. I like the safety out of South Carolina. I want a generational 10-year guy. And the Steelers, none of their first round picks have worked out like that. Okay, the Steelers have got to start doing better first to fourth round. They've done pretty good in the later rounds, but they're going to have to do better in the early rounds. And second round, I'm okay with because you got DK Metcalf. You got one of the most dominant potential offensive weapons in the NFL. Now, you got to know how to use him. You got to have a quarterback to get it to him. So, if Sanders was to fall, Sanders reminds me of Baker Mayfield. Now, I wrote an article back when Mayfield was coming out. I said I wouldn't touch him with the 10-foot pole. Now, the reason why is I did not like his attitude and his off-the-field issues. Of course, since that time, all that is cleared up. He's married. He's been well-adjusted. One thing you got to like about him, and reason I think Cleveland made a huge mistake when they lost him. To win when you are playing for a bunch of perennial losers, a franchise renowned for being losers, you got to have a massive ego. You can't listen to what the mainstream media says. You can't listen to what the other teams are saying. You got to have so much self-confidence and believe in yourself that you can take this cursed franchise and lead them to success. He led them to the playoffs. They beat the Steelers in the playoffs. Then he come back and he played all year with a dislocated non-throwing shoulder, and he didn't do as good. Surprise, surprise, in Cleveland, and they got rid of him and brought in a guy who loves special massages. So, you're talking about and they give him the biggest guaranteed contract ever. It's all guaranteed, and they're never going to get out from under. They're never going to live it down. They had a chance. Now, Baker Mayfield and Sanders reminds me of him because Sanders has incredible belief in himself. He played behind one of the worst offensive lines I've seen in college 2 years ago, and they beat him to death. And he stood in there to the last second and made the throw, Daniel. I mean, I'll give the kid credit. He's tough, he's accurate, and he has incredible self-confidence. And he's been around the pro game, so he's not going to be overwhelmed. Now, will he be a success? I don't know. Will his daddy be a distraction? There's a lot of questions there. But if a guy who was thought of as the first or second pick falls to number 21, even if you got to go up to, say, 18, and falls that far, there you're taking a chance. You're thinking outside the box. I would not be against throwing a dart at the board and trying to get a talent because I think he could come in and he would know how to command a huddle immediately. And that he will stand in there, which is something that a lot of young quarterbacks can't do. He'll stand in there and take the big shot because he can move, but he's not his daddy.
Yeah.
He's not the most mobile quarterback. He didn't get that part of Dion. So he has to be kind of a pocket passer. But last year I said Jaden Daniels was the best quarterback in the class. I still wholeheartedly believe that. And this year, of Cam Ward or Sanders, I have more faith in Sanders to be ready sooner just because of his background and experience to step in. And like I said, he got killed behind Colorado's line.
You do bring up some excellent points. I'm not the biggest college football guy, but I have watched some highlights of the quarterbacks. And I know a lot of people say, oh, you can't watch the highlights. The thing is, what I've noticed in Cam Ward's highlights is the guy's standing flat-footed a lot of the times. Like he's just there hanging out. And he could have had a sandwich, made a phone call.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of time. And with Sanders, you're right. He doesn't. And, I think it's the distraction that really, really kind of makes people kind of turn away from Sanders. he didn't have supposedly the best interview in the combine. I think that's why a lot of people are saying that his draft is stalking, and it may be some part of it. But Deion Sanders himself had came out, and I think he was talking on some news media places saying that he knows the teams that are trying to get his son to, that are trying to get his son to go down in stock and saying these negative things about him. I mean, he's going to go out there and say a bunch of things if this team's not doing well. I mean, if Shadir Sanders finds himself on the field and he's not playing well, I can see a Deion Sanders going out there and saying, well, DK Metcalf isn't, he's only running one route and George Pickens isn't giving effort. I mean, all those things that is probably going to result into some problems there.
Having a famous daddy, yes.
But I mean, shoot, can't get more toxic. I mean, just throwing Aaron Rodgers in the mix, Deion Sanders, George. I mean, you want to talk about a toxic soup there? It's brewing, I think.
Imagine if Mason Rudolph gets stuck between Aaron Rodgers and say Sanders, some crazy way that would work out. And I mean, he's just like, I'm retiring, I'm out of here.
XFL,
yeah,
pick up the phone. Yeah, I mean, that if that ended up happening, that would, I mean, Hard Knocks would be kicking themselves for choosing the Steelers last year and not this year, because it would be in line for some drama and some daytime news, that's for sure.
I like something you said about Ward and how much time he had and all the open guys and everything. And then you look at Howard at Ohio State with a wide receiver crew that's all NFL stars. I mean, they're all going to be NFL stars. Offensive line, it's going to be in the NFL. I mean, all that talent. And then you have Sanders competing behind the line he played behind. I know who I'd rather have. Because you want to go pro and feel like you stepped up in talent. Yeah. And I think some of these other guys are going to be like, man, it was better in college. Where's my NIL deal? Right. I mean, so I think that again, if he was to become available with them not having to trade up a lot and give up a lot, then I could see it. But if not, I'm just waiting on next year.
I agree. I'd rather wait for next year as well. And hope you bolster up a defensive line. Because I think, or even a running back, because the Steelers are going to end up drafting a running back at some point. I'm really hoping it's that Genty kid out of Boise. He seems very explosive. I'd be all in for another first round running back a lot faster if it was that young man versus a first round quarterback in this draft.
You think he would fall that far?
I mean, it depends, right? I mean,
I think the Cowboys, if they sniff him, they take him.
You think they'll take him? Well, they don't have. Yeah, they need an answer at the running back position. That's for sure. They haven't had one for some time. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up there, unless. No, they got Dak. I was gonna say you don't think they'll bring him Sanders, but they got Dak. Dak will. He's gonna be there for a minute.
It just seems too obvious. If they get a chance to get Jenny, he's gone.
Yeah, I think you're right. Steelers are going to be left with a defensive end or a quarterback. I mean, that's
or trade back.
That's true.
To late first, even early second, and pick up extra pick or two. Because think about it, as you said earlier, next year you're going to have the 4 comp picks. Right now, it's what it looks like, and then they should have their full complement next year, and they'll have some draft capital. But if you could get your second pick and maybe an extra one back this year, you could address so many needs. Because as we talked about, if you look at last year, the team that finished the season, I think the Steelers have improved already, even before the draft. Not quarterback. I'm talking about the rest of the positions. Quarterback, we just don't know. We do know we got Rudolph, so I'm okay. But I'm saying, running back, Harris was never a fit. And now he's gone. Now you got Warren. You got Gainwell, who is a really good fit for this offense. and a running back. A draft pick is what I'm assuming. You'd have to say that's an upgrade. Because I want Cordell Patterson gone. I think you agree.
Oh, yeah. I think the Steelers want him gone, too. Did you see that they forgot about him on his birthday?
I didn't.
He got all bent out of shape because he didn't get a birthday wish from the team.
Oh, that's horrible. That's horrible.
I mean, when they used to give the fullback, the third string fullback, a birthday wish, that's when you know your time is up. That's when you know your time is up.
Did you think it was an accident? I bet it was an accident.
I'm sure. They may have forgot he was on the team. One of the two. Mark comes in with a $2 super chat. I don't see anything attached to it, Mark. Thank you so much. If you have anything, the next thing I see, I'll
put the question in there.
I'll put the question. AFL says no Diddy.
I don't. There it is. He put it in there.
All right. He says I'd love to see us reach out to San Francisco and try to make a trade for Brock Purdy. I'd love to see that too. I think Brock Purdy is a guy that he's got it upstairs, and he's an accurate enough quarterback.
He's got heart.
He's got heart. That's definitely true.
He won't have the talent he had in San Francisco, but the kid's got heart. He's a leader, and he's got brains. Now, I think the Steelers could get there and give him a good squad. And, I mean, he has no ego. He's not worried about his brand or, so you can bring him in and he'll just run the offense. And I do like the kid a lot, but he's going to get paid.
Oh, yeah.
And but yeah, I agree. I'd rather see him, reach out and get Purdy than a lot of these other options.
Yeah, I would too. But, I mean, that would be a first round. Yeah, you'd have to give him a first round for Purdy. You would be without a draft pick until round 3. That's you're definitely probably looking at a defensive lineman in that round. I mean, you're going to have to attack something of that nature if you were to do something like that. Do you see the Steelers going into a draft where they don't have a pick until round 3? I mean, that sounds un-Steeler-like almost.
I would say normally, but again, we have to look at what they'd be getting. You'd have an instant starting quarterback and your best wide receiver since AB left.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take that because there is no guarantees that a first-round pick will develop or a second-round pick will develop. And these are guys that's been in the Pro Bowl. So, and they're not old.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, man alive, any old-timer hits the market, and everybody's like, Steelers need him. No, this team is not close to compete for a championship quite yet. You need to build younger.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. If they were to go out and get him, I'd say get him, go pick up a J.K. Dobbins. He's a free agent still, I believe, right?
Yeah.
You have him paired up there. I mean, I think you do have some talent there. Jaylen Warren, J.K. Dobbins, DK Metcalf, George Pickens, Brock Purdy. I mean, that's not a chump team to be going up against. That's a very potent offense, in my opinion. You got some weapons there to do some damage.
Oh, hey, they're getting close, Daniel. They're getting close. I was sitting back, we talked before the show. If you think about 4 guys didn't get to play at all last year.
Mm-hmm.
Fautanu, who's going to be a starter, if he's, and he should be. Roman Wilson, never got to see. He could come in there and say he's your 4th receiver. Or even 5th, because you got Calvin Austin. I still like to see him add somebody slot.
Yeah.
Now, Roman Wilson can play the slot, and he's good at it. And he's a blocker. He tries hard. But, like I said, I like Jack Besh out of TCU. I think that kid's going to be the next Pua Nakua. I'd love to see him get him maybe 3rd round.
Yeah.
And put him in there. You can rapidly improve. Because remember, you got Lee, the defensive end from Iowa, who basically had a redshirt season. He's going to be in there and part of that rotation. I truly believe it. And then you got Watts. Watts was like one of the most athletic secondary guys. And everybody said they're going to transition him to full-time safety. And he got that pitch nerve and the slip disc, I think, and he missed the whole year. If he's cleared, and I think he is, that's 4 guys that might not only make the team, but be contributors this year.
That's true. That is true. I mean, there's a lot of draft picks from last season that are in there that, as you mentioned, that weren't utilized this past season. Now with
so
Watts,
if you trade that first rounder for, say, Purdy, like you mentioned, we're just throwing it out there. You're getting a confirmed starting quarterback, and Fautano didn't play last year, so it's like you're having a first rounder this year.
That is true.
I mean, what I'm saying is there's just a lot could happen this offseason if they have a strong draft.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. A lot definitely can. And it's just, you just got to wait, right? I mean, I think April 21st, I think, is OTAs, or one of these days where they're going to come back and meet up and they're going to do a workout, some sort of workout for, how important is it that the Steelers have their quarterback in the building by then?
I'd like to see it. But, again, that's before the draft.
That is before the draft.
So they could go to them OTAs and they could have Rudolph and Skylar Thompson or whatever, the guy they picked up from the Dolphins.
Yeah.
They'd have a couple of arms to throw the ball around. And then, again, there's some options out there. And for me, none of them says Aaron Rodgers. So, because he wouldn't be showing up at OTAs anyway.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And training camp is probably a dream as well. If Aaron Rodgers ends up signing, that he end up showing up. He was in, I believe, Egypt last year or something like that for Jets training camp. And from what I understand, the Jets were a little bit taken by surprise by that. They thought he was going to be there. And I think that has a lot to do with what they were talking about in this 6-hour conversation that they had with him over the last couple of days ago. And I think they wanted to know what his commitment level was. Are you going to show up? Are you going to be a part of the training camp, be in Latrobe, et cetera, et cetera? But I think this is a good opportunity for Mason Rudolph. If there's some sort of delay there, I think that gives Mason every opportunity to go out there and say, hey, you don't need another guy, and perhaps show off what he can do. But yeah, what do you think's the next? When do you think that we're going to hear a definite answer on the quarterback decision? You think that's going to be something that we're going to have to wait till the draft?
It's looking like it. I mean, Rodgers, there's nothing to make him. I read somewhere that the Steelers had put the first due date or something out there for Rodgers. I don't know what. I didn't read it because I don't believe it. I think Rodgers will decide if he's going to take the offer or retire when he's ready. And I think the Steelers are saying, here's your 1-year offer, take it or leave it, because I think you got 2 very stubborn entities. So the only people really worrying about it's us.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. So yeah, the hard or soft deadline actually was reported that the Steelers have informed Rodgers that he has until April 21st to let them know about the deal, which is the start of the workout.
April 21st, yeah.
So basically, they want, if he's going to be the quarterback, they want him in the building so they can start to build chemistry with the receivers and start to build a relationship between himself and the offensive coordinator. And so April 21st will begin the process to get the process down. All right. Yeah. April 21st. Supposedly, that's the soft deadline, which means that there's probably been other deadlines before this, and it's just gone right by.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like you mentioned before, the Steelers, I think, going into this year, even with the question mark at quarterback, do you think today, where the Steelers were pre-draft last year, are they in a better position?
Pre-draft.
They had Russell already. They had their quarterback.
They didn't have Fields yet, though, did they?
I think that was closer to the draft.
I think so, yeah. I think that pre-draft last year to this year, they are better this year because, again, the 4 draft picks that didn't get to play at all, And then
That's
the
true.
ones that did play were successful. You know,
Mhm.
Peyton Wilson was a very good player this year, I thought, and has a lot of potential. And you know, I think that the Steelers kind of needed some spring cleaning,
Mhm.
and I think they did that with free agency. They let most of their free agents walk, and in the process, they got comp picks for them
Yeah.
because they wasn't terrible players. They just wasn't good fits with the Steelers. So it's great that other teams coveted them and they spent what they spent on them, and that'll help the Steelers with comp picks. So I think it was a necessary thing and needed to happen. And I do think the Steelers are better off now.
You know, I do too. I think last year they had an opportunity to be something special, especially if the Brandon Ayuk trade would have gone down. They would have had Ayuk, they would have had Pickens, you know, even with Russell Wilson. But they didn't get that guy there. And Jalen Warren, although at this point we didn't know he was going to end up being hurt, um, the running back position, I kind of believe in subtraction, addition by subtraction there. You know, when you hear about the things that Najee has said about the Pittsburgh Steelers organization while he's been with the Chargers, you know, we've you know, seen or heard the rumors about the things that he said in the media that the Pittsburgh Steelers team didn't like as an organization. You know, even if what he was saying may have been true to a certain extent, he was a 1 year captain. You know, I think maybe there's some more smoke there to Najee Harris, and maybe perhaps now, you know, getting that opportunity to go out there, maybe draft a guy. I think this is a deep draft for running backs. Uh,
Yep.
you know, I think that getting faster and having maybe perhaps a home run hitter there, even though it's not on the team, because the options there for the future there at that position is wide open. I would have to say, yeah, I think that right now I feel more confident in this season and where they're going in the draft this year than they were last year. And I think I feel more comfortable as far as the fact that the position of need that the Pittsburgh Steelers have, like the running back, defensive lineman, etc., are positions that are deep in this year's draft. So I think that's also very helpful to this team going forward. What do you think?
No, I totally agree. I think that I think I agree with a lot of what Harris has said. Now, should he say it? You know, that's I mean, because you know, hey, Tomlin had his back in every step, in
Mhm.
every way. And so if you want to take a shot at the organization and you want to tell the truth, I agree they had no offensive identity. Half the time they had no idea what they wanted to do. The facilities ain't as good. We've seen that in the ratings. All the stuff, yes, but you don't say it because it looks badly on not only yourself, but it also reflects onto Tomlin and other people that had his back. Um, but it ain't his fault. They should have never drafted him. You
Mhm.
never draft a guy that runs a 4.7 and you never seen him run the 40 before you draft him. You
Mhm.
know, from the end of the year, until he was drafted, he never did anything because he was supposedly injured. And I think it was a very smart ploy and plan from his agent to not let them know that he's a 4.7 guy because they do slow, and it was a terrible fit for the Steelers offense, and that was one of the worst reaches. And I mean, he plays hard, he tries hard. I think you'll have success uh, in a different system, a different scheme, different quarterback. You know, I think that, and I have nothing against the kid, but he just was not the right fit for the Steelers. And I agree, it's addition by subtraction.
Yeah, I think when you have somebody who's just constantly potentially going against, you know, what the team is wanting, other players are going to see that. And even he himself said there was a bunch of young players looking up to nobody because there was a bunch of young players. There was no,
Mm-hmm.
you know, veteran there on the offensive side. He had to go reach to the defensive side for leadership and role model. Well, what that says is everybody was looking up to you.
Yeah.
And you were being probably not the best role model in that situation. Um, and you know, just kind of like Deontay Johnson, so to speak. Even though the Steelers maybe were in a worse position as far as talent goes in the receiver room last year, I think that was also an addition by subtraction. And having somebody like a DK Metcalf, although who demands the ball, um, he also puts his money where his mouth is, and can prove it. He's gone out there, he's shown effort on plays, he's chased down Buda Baker when he intercepted the ball, and
Oh
he was
man, yeah.
basically going in for a walk-in touchdown. He chased him down. He didn't give up, and that's the kind of leader. Although maybe perhaps there could be some ego there, I think that when you have the production to match it, it speaks more volumes to me.
Oh, I'm thrilled about Pickens. Not Pickens, but Metcalf.
Metcalf.
I would, maybe there's hope that Pickens, he'll see Metcalf and he's like, that's what I want to be, and let's create this dynamic duo and get Rudolph hitting them. They're perfect for Rudolph. If that's going to be my receivers with an improved running game, like we talked about, and maybe pick up a third guy in the draft. I mentioned some names, and hey, there's guys out there. Shoot, Flacco. If Rudolph goes out, you're bringing in an older version who loves to throw deep, that still has the arm. Get the ball to the big play guys and let them make plays. I mean, he took Cleveland to the playoffs. Just because they were super hot. They had a great defense, and him slinging the ball over the yard. Right now, you do what you got to do in a situation like that. And then, as you say, your quarterback in the future, and hopefully in next draft class.
Yeah, I definitely hope so. I mean, I think everybody knows that I'm hoping it's Archie Manning. I hope it's planning for Manning this year. I think there's a lot of teams that are doing that. I know he hasn't put out a lot of film out there in college, but when he has stepped out onto the field, the guy's got everything. He's got the intangibles, he's got the tangibles. Thus so far. I mean, I'd like to see what he does when he hits adversity. I think that's probably going to be the next hurdle for that young man to go over. But so far, he seems as advertised.
You don't think the Mannings would pull another, pull another one where they're like, well, my boy don't want to play there?
I hope so, because there's no way the Steelers are picking number one. I hope so. I hope so that's what happens.
Work out for the Steelers, you say?
That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that they pull out like, hey, we don't want to play for the Browns or some of these other teams that are in the bottom five. We'll wait for the Steelers, or something like that. That'd be great. I mean, that's the hope, man. That's the hope, because I don't think the Steelers will be picking first overall, and I think that in order to get, if he ends up being as advertised and he goes out there and performs in the manner that he has been when he's been having the opportunity to go out there, the guy's probably going to be the first quarterback off the board, and you're probably looking at number one. So the hope is he's going to want to not play for the team that's picking number one. Let's hope that happens.
Well, they would be like more apt to make a trade.
Yeah, exactly. And perhaps that trade could be with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know if they'll go all the way up to number one to pick a guy, but you never know. You never know. Some weirder stuff has happened. If he's your guy and you got to give up the farm for him, I mean, you franchise George Pickens, keep him there another year with DK. I mean, you have a basketball team on that side as far as your receivers and your tight ends. You're not going to be paying him a lot, so you'll be able to, afford both receivers. I think you can really do something there if you end up getting yourself that quarterback of the future next year. But
do what you got to do to get him. Start, you'll have to start over on defense, because you're going to have to move some guys to free up some money and maybe get some more capital. And but that's easier to do than finding a franchise quarterback.
Exactly. And I don't like Big Pun says, why would Arch want to play in this offense? I mean, Joe Burrow played for the Bengals, and look at what they were before him offensively. So, I mean, he had people telling him, he had telling people, including former NFL quarterbacks of the Bengals, not to go there. and he ended up going there. And so he made a big difference there. And I think that if you have the quarterback that has those intangibles and the tangibles to get the ball down the field and everything in between, I put a lot of stock in their ability to figure something out. I mean, if you have a decent offensive coordinator and you have a really good quarterback, he should be able to figure out how to put his best foot forward. You know what I mean?
Oh, when the Bengals took Jamar Chase, and I'm like, Burrows had got his knee blowed out in the middle of his rookie year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, they had a chance to pick the offensive tackle that went to the Detroit Lions. I can't think of his name now.
Mm-hmm.
And they passed on him, and they took Chase. And I'm like, oh, man, that's the Bengals for you. Nope. They knew the chemistry that Burrows and Chase had. Then they got Higgins, and then they got, and so now how that defense is going to look, but now their offense is explosive. So, now they're just trying to find some talent on defense. But you got to do what you got to do to get that quarterback.
Exactly. Well, Shannon, do you have any final words for everybody? I think you're going to be on Pump Your Brakes. Is that correct?
Yep. Wednesday at 8, and good Lord willing. And like I said, people will notice. I'm starting to, look at how things are going, how they're adding these depth pieces, strengthening the rotations at some key positions. And I'm still feeling positive because they haven't signed Rodgers yet. Now, if they sign Rodgers, then I might be a little bit upset and down again on where this season's going. But I do have hope that they have accelerated the rebuild when you consider the 4 guys that didn't play last year, with the free agencies, with the trades for, getting Metcalf, and now the potential draft. So, keep coming back, and I'm seeing a lot of great observations and ideas thrown in our discussion thread, and we all enjoy that. So definitely check us out.
I got one last question there for you, Shannon. Since you were bringing up Rodgers so much, he's really good. Well, one of his fans, so to speak, fanboys, is the real TB12, Terry Bradshaw. If he gave his blessing to Rodgers to wear 12 and he was wearing 12, how would you feel about it?
7 and 12 in Steelers, to me, is like, it would be hard to see anybody wear it. I mean, I've watched guys wear 88, 95, there's just certain numbers, but I would not want to see Rodgers definitely not wearing number 12.
Me either. I think that that's a piece of history. That's Terry Bradshaw's number. Aaron Rodgers is probably going to be here for a year if he's here at all.
Exactly.
It's not, you know what I mean? It'd be one thing if it was like, if it was Aaron Rodgers maybe 10 years ago. I think maybe different story, but not so much the case today. Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. Ring that notification bell, and share the content. We'd appreciate that. That being said, Shannon, take us out, my man.